Hey guys. So, like I have my diffuser here to bring in like those Zen vibes. It's like I'm in like Toronto, so it's pretty sunny outside and it's feeling good. So hopefully you guys are feeling kind of energized. I know it can be like tiring going through a hackathon. So if you feel like you want to get a little bit of like energy going, like feel free to take some time to just stand up, stretch a little bit, like punch it out. Yes, I am using a standing desk, Estelle. All right. All right, let's get going. All right, so hi everyone. I'm Pavi, and just a little bit about me. I actually came from a non-traditional background of, oops, too far. There we go. Biochemistry. So I came from a non-traditional background of biochemistry, and I actually transitioned into product design. So kind of an unconventional background, but just for some people who might be looking to do that transition in the future, it's totally doable and you can do it. And I'm currently working at Shopify as a product designer. And I love my job and I love what I do. So no regrets with that transition there. So today we're going to be learning how to do some rapid problem solving in product design. So what is product design? So just to kind of give you an idea of what that might be, high level, product design is essentially problem solving. So you'll be doing a lot of problem solving in product design. And it'll often be around tech problems more so. If you're looking to transition into product design, that's what you'll be doing. We'll be using an industry tool actually today that's commonly used across for those of you who might be new to design, and that tool is Figma. So we'll be getting into that shortly, but just a little bit more about what product thinking is. So essentially, like good products will always start with a people problem. So that's essentially looking into what is that person's unfulfilled need, and that could be in any sort of scenario. And you'll often want to dive into the root problem. You might be given a very broad problem space, like we're going to be looking at today designing an ATM experience. So that seems pretty broad. So what about it? Trying to get into that very specific root problem. That's also what we're going to try to do today. So a root problem could be, I want a faster horse. Doesn't that seem kind of broad to you? It could be more specific to say that I want to get from A to B quickly and faster. So the most important question that you'll find designers often ask is why. So why are you all here today, and why are we learning how to think like product designers, and why are we learning to solve problems very quickly? Often in interviews, you'll have to do a whiteboarding exercise, and I've had to do this, and a lot of other product designers have to do this as part of your interview process. And it allows the interviewers to gain insight into how you approach and solve a problem. So that's what we're going to be learning to do today. So if any of you are looking to transition, you're learning a skill that's going to help you hopefully land a job if you're able to do this exercise. Often it's done in person, and it might be about like 30 to 45 minutes that you have to do it, which seems like a very short time. Often when you hear about design sprints, they seem like a week long, but that's not the case. So without further ado, let's dive in. I'm going to be going through a little bit about Figma because some of you might be new to it, and we'll then get into the problem. So I'm going to be sharing a link with you, so just give me a second where I share that. Hopefully there isn't any like tech problems. right, so I'm going to be sharing a link with you. If you haven't clicked or you haven't created a Figma account yet, it will prompt you to create an account. The account is free. And once you do that, duplicate the file, and I will show you that quickly, shortly. All right. So if you click on that link, it should bring you into a page like this. You click on this down arrow here, and you can duplicate the file. So I'm just going to give you a couple of minutes because I'm just going to assume not everyone has created a Figma file yet. So feel free to put in any questions if there's any issues with that link and creating your Figma account. I'm just going to give everyone about 2 minutes. Unfortunately, I can't physically see your laptops or computers to know if you have this. Anyone having trouble duplicating? Yeah, so if it's view only, you should see an arrow here. So I'm showing you again. So you see an arrow here, and then you should be able to duplicate. There's an option to duplicate. I'll leave that up there. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, that's right. Duplicate to drafts. Oh, that's weird. Do you have an account? Have you created an account? You might not see it if you haven't created a Figma account yet. Okay, I'm going to be sharing another link for people who are having trouble. I have a second link in case there's too many people on it. Try that one. And I'll share a third one too. So click on one of those two and you should be able to do it. So you already have a drafts tab. If you go into Figma, like on your right side panel, you should have like a drafts column. So you don't have to create it or anything. As soon as you duplicate it, it should open up that duplicated file. Awesome. I'm just going to give everyone a minute because, oh, it's not working. I sent you, they're all the same files. So if you duplicate any of those links that I sent you, it should work. I'll keep that open again. So you click on this little down arrow and it should give you like duplicate to drafts option. Yes, yes, because your duplicated one will allow you to edit. Let me know if you're having any trouble. It's totally okay if you are, because it is a little bit weird doing it this way. And I obviously want all of you to have fun in this workshop, so it's not going to be fun if you are having trouble and you can't do anything without Figma. Yeah, of course. There's a down arrow up here, like a drop down, and you should have the option to duplicate to drafts. So yeah, I'll keep that open so you can kind of see how that looks. For those of you who are waiting, feel free to kind of just play around and look around. Like if you're on a MacBook, you can use your trackpad to move around in the file. You can also click on things normally. I put in a little Figma basics, like you'll see that at the bottom here. So you feel free to take a look at that and just try to familiarize yourself. This file is yours to keep, so do anything you want with it. Yeah, so as soon as you duplicate that file, the link that I sent you, that file is yours. So that would be like considered your original file. Yeah, no worries. I'm going to start moving on, and for anyone that's having trouble, like don't worry. We'll come back to help you because I'm going to give all of you some time to just jam around and have some fun in Figma. All right. So is everyone able to scroll? If you're on a Mac, you can use your trackpad. Another way to do it, there's some instructions here. Another way you can move around your file is like you see this little hand. It says hand tool. You can click on it, and then you literally can just like drag across the screen here. Whoa. So this allows you to like get from like place to place. So this is actually a tool that's used by most designers actually. And the cool thing about this is like you can, yep, exactly, you can do that. Awesome, thank you. Yeah, so this is a tool that we all use. We also use this at Shopify. I put in like a list of like Figma basics, and it's kind of like a cheat sheet, so you can like go through and yes, that's right, Lila. Like product designers, there's kind of like with product design and UX design, there's always like these blurred lines, but essentially you are doing the same thing. With product design is more so focused from an end-to-end experience where you're looking at the initial root of the problem. So you will think of the UX, and you'll also have to design a lot more. Sometimes, often like the UX experience ends with doing wireframes, but we also do high fidelity mockups, which kind of look similar to what you would see when you go onto like a website or an app. So it's not essentially coding, but being able to design it with a design system. I'm not sure what that means. WebGL isn't supported in my browser. Is anyone else getting that? I don't know if you're able to share screenshots because I actually don't know what that means. Yeah, maybe try a different browser. I'm using Chrome. Yeah, you can also get the app. I'm doing it in the browser right now, but you also have the app, but we don't need to worry about that for now. All right, so yeah, there's a cheat sheet here, so feel free to take a look at that. And I'm going to give you guys like a couple of minutes to just go through that and kind of just feel a little bit more comfortable. It's a new tool, so it might just take a little bit of time to kind of just get used to it, but you'll only need to know the basics in order to do the exercise, so don't worry too much about it. I'm going to show you a couple things right now on like how to, create like artboards and shapes and stuff like that. So an artboard is essentially something like this, which you can create. I'm actually going to, so this is more clear for you guys. Right, so an artboard is essentially the frame that you're actually going to put all these components on. So think of it as kind of like your canvas that you're going to start painting on. So this is actually the frame tool that you can use to add in a frame. So if you click on that and click on frame, it gives you a bunch of options. Like this right side panel is likely going to be your best friend. It allows you to do so much. You can literally choose any sort of frame and size that you want. And you have like the option of choosing like a tablet, phone, desktop. So you can choose anything and that would pop up like the frame up for you. So you can just play around with that. And for shapes, you can use this tool here. There are shortcuts, but I'm just showing you guys the basics for now because that will probably be a whole other lesson on its own. So yeah, you can literally have the option of creating like all sorts of shapes and you just click and drag. Should be the same across for like everybody. I can create an oval or a circle shape. If you want to click like, I guess you could do this. I'm just testing it out. And let me try that again. So if you were to click and just drag a circle, the shape, it would literally like, it might not be even. If you hit Option and I believe Shift, that will give you like an even-sided oval shape. So we'll get into that more as we start to play around with it a little bit. So feel free to do that. And this is a vector. So a vector essentially allows you to create like any sort of shape. Yes. Thank you for helping me out, friends. All right, so yes, you have the option of using a pen tool, and that allows you to create like any sort of random shape that you want. We won't be doing too much of that today. It'll be pretty like basic shapes. And of course, text. A shortcut key you can use is you just hit T and then you click, and that allows you to blah, 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 blah type. And you can also use the T up here to add in text, and then you click. You can enter in your text here. The side panel, like I said, is what I meant by it being your best friend is like you can change it to any sort of typeface you want, the size. There are definitely more options. You can change the color. You can also do the same thing for shapes as well. So yeah, feel free to refer to this the sheet as we progress along. I actually wanted to give everyone some time to play around, and I thought a fun exercise would be to try to recreate the screen. And don't feel stressed out about it. Like even if you don't end up doing it, like the point is to just have fun and figure out how to maneuver your way around Figma and get a little bit more comfortable with it. So this is actually, I believe, is in. Feel free to choose like any frame you want, but I think this is an iPhone screen maybe. And I've put in a lot of like components here that you can just literally everything you need to be able to create this sort of shape. I'm going to show you a little trick on like how you can learn more about like how these components are created. And because you're looking at this and you notice that there are a lot of details. If you look closer, zooming in is also something else. You can use your trackpad to zoom in and out as you would with the typical gestures. For Windows, you can do Command plus and Command minus to zoom in and zoom out, because you'll likely need to do that quite a bit when you're going around. Sorry that I can't see everyone, so feel free to drop in questions as you see them coming. Yeah, so a quick little thing you can do to figure out how these shapes are made or what sort of proportions they're using. Let's say I want to know how the shape was done. I'm going to, and I think this is, so it's Command and click. So I'm going to hold down my Command key and then click on the shape. And then for Windows, I think you click on Control and you can click with your mouse. So if you hold down Control and click, that should work for Windows. You can also just click on the shape as well, but that would give you so sort of assets to like the overall shape. So what I'm showing you, and that's a little like hack here that I put in, is how to deep select a specific layer. So these guys, so if we're looking at this shape, this is an artboard, and each of these specific things, so the specific rectangle right here is called a layer, and this shape is also called a layer. So if you hold down Command and click, you're actually going to be able to see how the shape was made and what kind of shadows it's using. They've used like a drop shadow, and I'll give you some time to look into that. Don't worry about this so much. These are all like extra effects, but just so you can learn how these shapes are made and how these UI elements have been created and added. For example, like if you want to look at how these edges are rounded, you have like a little radius icon over here that you can kind of click and drag to change the shape of the radius. So you can do that too. So I'm going to give you some time to play around and figure out like how to try to recreate the screen. And if you have any questions, drop them here and I will actually show you how to do it. But I wanted everyone to have a chance to do it. So I have all the icons over here, so don't worry too much about the sizing of things. You could just use the sizing here. And if you want to compare, what you can do is sort of evaluate the shape and the size here and try to create that shape on your own. Is there anything specific that you want me to show you? Promi, I'm sorry if I'm saying people's names wrong. I apologize. And for Elizabeth's earlier question, I'm trying to understand what you're referring to. Are you talking about this last rectangle here, or are you talking about up here? I'm assuming you're talking about this. Yes, that's right. Yeah. I'm assuming, Elizabeth, you're talking about this. Yeah, so for this one, like, yeah, you can probably use a mask, but I actually didn't do that. You could literally just layer the navigation on top of that layer. So if I actually move this for you, you can see that the whole layer is showing. But yeah, like you can mask it. You can mask it. But don't worry too much about that. Yeah, so you can use your shortcut keys to undo. That's what I usually do. So you could just do Control Z, and that would revert things back. I think in the files, I actually don't use this too much, but I think you have the option of like going into File, Edit, and Undo, Redo. Yeah, good question. I was kind of expecting this question to come up, how to add the images and the shapes. Um, yeah, so there are a couple different ways. I'm going to show you what we can do today, and so hold on. All right, so let's look at this card, for example, and you're trying to add an image in here. I'm not sure if you have the selection, but what you can actually do is if you have an image, like, so you don't have to choose the images I have here. You can even bring, I'm just like, for people who want to play more, like you can also bring in like images from Google. I just put this in for you. So a quick way to do this is, so you create a rectangle, right? And then let's just round the edges there. Okay. And let's say I want to bring in this image. Sorry, if I'm going too fast, let me know. So you can actually use the same sort of like masking tip idea to be able to do this. So a quick way to do that is you select both layers. So how to do that is you would click on one and then you would hold down Shift to click on the other layer. Yeah, so Prami, I'm gonna show you that right now. So if you've selected those two layers, you can also select it on the side panel, but I'm just showing you a common way that you would do it. So you would, again, you would command click or control click for Windows users, and you will hold down Shift, and you would click on that next layer. And then you see like this little tool here. This is called, this is essentially the masking tool that you can use, and that will mask it. Now you see what happened? Because I put the layer, the rectangle on top of the image, I can't actually see it. So you would actually have to mask it in a way that the rectangle is underneath. So let's just say I'm gonna group these guys for sanity. So if you select both those layers, so I've selected the rectangle, so I'm gonna move the rectangle under that tool. So I select here, select this. I'll show you that right after the icon question. And you can use as mask, and that will mask it. And let's say you don't like the placement of how that looks, you can definitely move that image around and do it. There's actually another way to bring in images if you are using an image from Google. And I mean, for those of you who are interested, I could show you that after, but I kind of just want to show you like the basic way to do it. So that's one way. Another thing that you can do, which I personally find easier, because this to me is kind of annoying that I have to do it this way, creating this mask. So let's just select, this is a nice image. So let's just select this guy. And you see this right-hand tab here. I'm going to select this part, this styling guide right here. So I click on style. I'm going to go slowly. And then you can create a style. So let's call this forest. I'm going to pause here for a quick second. so you can actually see what I have open and what I'm doing here. All right. And I'm going to create style. So now I have this. This has a created style in my colors list. So now let's go back here and figure out, like, back to that question. Okay, like, how am I gonna fill this rectangle with an image in the least painful way? All right, so I'm gonna select this triangle, or sorry, rectangle, forgetting shapes now. And going into the color options, you actually can now, oops. Sorry, I missed something there. All right, so if you go into your fill, you now have the option of adding this as your fill. So if I go back in here and I select this, voila, how easy was that? I would assume this is like a faster way. Like, yeah, it's magic, right? Like it's pretty cool. I would recommend this way as like the easier way to like quickly do that versus like masking. Masking can get really annoying when you're adding more things to it. You can, yeah, I guess you can round it, but I'm almost wondering, like, you wouldn't have to if, like, in the case that you're creating something, like you're creating like a template and you're literally just creating the rectangle here, because that's likely what you're doing. I would say this is probably faster. Rounding the edges, you can do that, but that might just take you a little bit more time. Yeah, I can show you how to round the rectangles, and right after that, I'm going to go to that icon question, if that question's still there. Yeah, so the rectangle rounding, you actually have the option anytime you create a rectangle. There's like a radius, corner radius option here, which is really nice. And you can just round the corners as much as you want. You can enter a number too. So like, let's say I'm just going to put in 100. So you see how that shape changed? Yeah, so for those icons, I think they're just a standard size, but if you want to increase the size, you can just select them and increase the size like that if you want to. It's probably the easier way. By the way, like, hold down shift if you want like an even way of, so it's not like a weird like oval shape. The color of the outline. Sorry, I'm not sure which outline you mean, Sammy. Oh, I know what you mean. Sorry. Okay, I get it now. My bad. Yeah, so good question. If you want to change the color, you have like the option of changing the color here, and that should change it to like any sort of color you want. Yay. Lock overlap shapes into one shape. Yeah. I'm assuming I know what you're asking me. Is there a way to lock overlap shapes into one shape so it's easier to move the image around? So I'm assuming you mean, well, because I made this a fill, it's actually a lot easier to move around. If you're talking about like a shape within a shape, like let's say you have like a rectangle, let's make that white. and then another rectangle here, right? So let's say I want to move the shape, like look what happens, that's annoying, right? What you can do is actually hold down, you select the whole thing. I believe this is going to be Command G for Mac, and then it should be Control G for Windows users, and that will group it together. So I'm going to call this frame, and then you'd be able to move that around. Hopefully that answers your question. Awesome. Yeah, so guys, have fun with that. Keep them questions coming. I'm going to give you a couple of minutes because I'd like to get into, like, now that you understand the basics, I kind of want to get into like how you can use a canvas to solve a product design problem. So I'll give you a few minutes. Also, just wanted to say it's still not too late if you're having trouble accessing the file. Let me know. And feel free to drop in comments about what you think about this tool. I'd love to hear it. And what you potentially don't like. I mean, I'm sure that might come with time, but. Yes, of course. All right, so we want to put an image in a circle. So I'm going to do this as the last one before we move on to that next section, and then hopefully we do have a couple. Yeah, surely. I'm going to go through that again in case anyone missed it. Okay, so I'll first go over like the circle question, and then I'll come back. I'll come back to those because I do want to spend time on that canvas a little bit and give you guys some time to sort of like understand how to go through it. All right. So I created a circle, right? And now I want to put an image in there. So let's say this is going to be like your user icon. All right. So let's choose any, feel free to choose any image, by the way. You don't have to follow exactly what I'm doing. Select any image. And I'm going to add this to my list of fills. So this is essentially like kind of like almost like a color, like you would use fill for a color, but we're actually filling our objects with an image. So you add that image into your, and let's just call this a user. And you create style. And you see how that image popped up here? So that should show up as one of your style options. All right. And now we're going to go back to the circle here. Okay. And we see fill. So I'm going to go back and say, okay, I want to fill this with this image with the user. And there you go. Also, I'll be available on Slack, so guys, like, feel free to continue asking me those questions. Yeah, no worries. I'm going to move on to the canvas, and I will come back to any other questions. All right, so this is actually something I learned from a book I read on like how to solve product design exercises. And this actually helped me a lot during my interviews. And I thought it would be really cool to share this with all of you, because if any of you are looking to shift into product design, this is something you'd have to know how to do. So we're going to go through this step by step. So I was saying that what we're going to try to do is improve the ATM experience. So when you're looking at this question right now, you're like, wow, like this seems really broad. I don't know where to start. And this chart essentially is going to help you narrow down to your specific idea. So if this is something you are trying to like whiteboard, or you're trying to actually write down and show it, you can, and also feel free to, like, now that we're doing all these like interviews virtually, you might even have to do this exercise on Figma. So this would be really cool to pull up and say, okay, this is how I'm thinking through a problem. So remember that initial question that we said that we're going through when I was going through like the slides initially, was a lot of the questions we ask is why. So why do we want to improve the ATM experience? What about it? And from there, you want to sort of start to think about what are the potential users. And, you know, often we think we're designing for everybody, but, you know, what about seniors? People who are often neglected in a lot of these solutions. And what about folks who might have a visual impairment? How would they operate an ATM machine? And with how ATM experiences work today, do you guys feel that they are accessible? Would anyone be able to figure out how to use it? And also think about where we have ATMs, right? This might vary from country to country. Yeah, so the name of the book, I've also linked it here, so that should link you out to the book too. So if you have, I put in a reference here, so if you click on or even hover over it and open link, that will open you into the book. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, this is sort of like not exactly creating a persona. Sometimes you go into a lot of detail when you're creating a persona, but here we're just trying to narrow down as to like who we want to focus on. And it's always exciting to choose like a different user group. And in terms of the context and user needs, think about in which context people might want to use an ATM. Where will they be using it? Are they outside? Are they indoors? Is this going to change now with, you know, the world that we're living in during the pandemic? How's that going to work? And with ideas, this is essentially a section for you to go just go ham with it and figure out like all these sort of ideas that you come up with and that just pop into your brain. Obviously, when you're constrained for time, you might have some limited ideas, but I always recommend going with about like 4 to 5 options. And with those ideas, you're going to be able to sort of put it on this chart. Some of you might have seen this. I don't know if it was at another workshop or you might have come across this. If you haven't, this so much helps you figure out how you want to prioritize and which solution you want to focus on. So impact is where you think like the impact would be higher, and effort is from low to high. So ideally, I mean, we do have a sweet spot. You ideally want it to be a high impact, low effort solution, but that's sometimes rare. So I would say probably somewhere in the middle would be kind of decent. And this would obviously be like that North Star, like where you'd want to go to. So we'll get into solve and like the success metrics. This is kind of a cool one, and I kind of want to leave you guys to think about that after on like how would you measure it. So this is something you would have to think of as a product designer too, of like, okay, how will I know that this product is performing well and this is actually helping people? Because often we just design something, we forget about it, and you're like, oh yeah, it should help people. So think about that. Like how are you going to know that this is actually working? So right now, like I'm looking at the time and I want to make sure everyone has a chance to kind of go through this. So I'm going to give you some time to go through this chart and think about how to improve the ATM experience. And feel free to list out or like put in the questions here because I'm sure like the questions might vary before I get into any sort of like details, but I want to give all of you an opportunity to do that. Um, and with text, now that you're all Figma geniuses now, you should just be able to click on it and edit. So I really encourage everyone to start of like think about like a very specific problem with the ATM and how you can improve that experience. Let me know if anyone's having any issues following along. I'm also curious, like, feel free to think out loud and also pop in like some kind of things that you're thinking of, like of the sort of problem you're trying to target and maybe the user. Like, feel free to. I'd love to hear what you guys are thinking about. Yeah, these are good ones. I'm also curious, like, as to like the ideas that people might have around, kind of like thinking about how we're living today and how we can improve an ATM experience now. Like people are so much more scared to leave their homes. Yeah, that's a great one, right? COVID and sanitary issues. Like, and I would say that's probably like you're starting to, which is great, you're starting to think about sort of like get into like that when and where and like how it's being used because you'd often have to, touch the keypads. And we all know, like even before COVID, like the ATM machines are really dirty and you have to touch the screen and stuff. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so this is all great. You guys are starting to think about like very specific things. Like maybe solving that sanitary problem is one of the things that you want to focus on. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you often have lineups and the space often like when you're using the ATM machine is so narrow and small. Like how's that going to work? And what if someone's in a wheelchair? Like how are they going to operate it or maneuver themselves around? That's hard, right? Yeah, like I would figure like that's probably where like the direction would be going. Like, and I think to sort of um, put it in a different perspective, how would seniors be able to operate that? How would they be able to figure out how to do that? Would it be easy for them? I'm not sure my grandma would know how to do that on a phone. Yeah, see that makes it challenging, right? Yeah, so like let's just say sanitary needs was something you wanted to focus on. So that's essentially improving. Maybe you're just looking at improving the existing ATM experience of how it is. And for folks that might find it dirty, yeah, some people even forget their money in the ATM. Like yeah. So that's very unfortunate. And some people forget their cards even. So how can we get better with that? So these are like really, really good problems to figure out. So yeah, let's just say that's you're trying to improve like the existing experience, and let's just go with um, trying to list out potential ideas that you think might help with that. I know some great ideas were listed here, like a mobile app. Are there other solutions like outside of using a mobile app? What do you think you can improve? Like if if you were limited to only improving the experience of how the ATM machine is today? Yep, exactly. Yeah, audio instructions is a good one, Jennifer. Yeah, that's also a good one, Sammy. I like that. Yeah, that's really nice. That's actually a very, see, that shows empathy, that you're thinking about folks and like kind of like putting yourselves in their shoes and how hard it's going to be like when you have to stand and operate something. Um, it gets really hard, right? Guys, you guys are killing it with these ideas. These are awesome. Yeah, so once you've like listed out your ideas, like the thing I was a cool thing to do here to sort of figure out, because sometimes with hackathons you have so many ideas in your head and you're struggling to figure out where you want to focus and like which specific idea you want to spend your time on, because you only have a short amount of time. This is a great way to figure out where you want to spend your efforts. And you can just I put in these sticky notes so you can actually put in your ideas here and map it out on this impact chart. So maybe like creating creating a mobile app, or putting in like, or creating like a kiosk experience. I think that Sammy mentioned earlier. Those could be some of your ideas. Yeah, retina scanning is also, yeah, that's a great one actually. Yeah, that's a good one. Try to think about it. And I guess like when you're mapping it out in this impact effort, kind of think about the technical issues and how much effort you might need to put into that. For example, maybe putting in, I think there was one that I think it was Promi that mentioned about having a chair. That's something that seems like pretty low, like in terms of effort, because that's improving the experience. But in terms of impact for seniors, if that's your target user, maybe that's going to be somewhere over here, where it's in terms of impact, it's actually helping a lot of those people. But this would be specific to seniors, of course. Like, is there going to be like a separate space for them to do it? Like, how would it work for people who are regularly coming in? Yeah, these are all great. Yeah, so you might have you might have several ideas here, and I would say try to do something that you'd be able to achieve somewhere in the middle, and also being conscious of time. You'd actually want to try to aim for low effort and medium to high impact. Yeah, so just moving on with the next couple of steps that you'd have to do, and I'm just gonna, for those of you who are still doing the hackathon, like feel free to take this away and use it. But in terms of the solve, you now already have the skills of how to build, how to design something on Figma. Like you all can now like do a basic design on Figma or even better for some of you who are more experienced with it. So you can mock something up and kind of similar to what we did earlier. Like if you're creating like a mobile app, you could do something like that. But try to think about the sort of story you're going to tell of the user. So in the case of, for people who are elderly, start to think about what their start to end experience is. So how would they go from, maybe it's like the first step is getting from home to the ATM machine. Is there something, what kind of process is that? And then from there, how would the ATM machine work? Step. So what would they see first? What would they see second? So that would allow you to kind of create this sort of flow from like their start of, which is getting to the ATM machine, to the end, which is maybe their actual task is to, I want to withdraw $100. So that would be your final step. So if you list it out, so let's just say like your first step is to get to ATM, and then your second step is to, if you're using a scan, maybe it's a base scanner or a retinal scanner, for example. And then what happens after? Or maybe this is even like you scan your phone. Who knows? Scan phone for maybe people who are younger. And then what happens? Since I've already scanned my phone, maybe my mobile app, like maybe I've already entered that I wanted to withdraw $100 on my app. And then I literally just go to the ATM machine and the ATM machine just gives me the money, like ATM scans and shoots out money. Dollar bills. All right, so that would be like a quick example of like your start to sort of end experience. And the reason I highly recommend you kind of list these things step by step is so you can figure out how to map out your flow. And this one, I'm going to challenge all of you to figure out how that might work in terms of how the success is measured. We have 1 minute left, and again, feel free to ask me questions on Slack as well. I put in a section here for references. So this would actually link you out to a lot of helpful documents so you guys can quickly, like, I don't want you to spend too much time like figuring out like, oh, how is it visually going to look? I want you to spend more time on the experience. So I put in a lot of like, not a lot, but I put in some references here for you guys to just link into, and it allows you to duplicate it. And you can then use those components to build out your experience. All right. So yeah, for those of you who are in Hacker Olympics, don't feel like too stressed out about it. Like just use the wireframes if you don't want to worry about color. Yeah, so definitely go ahead and do that. You can reach me out on Slack, and for anyone else who wants to reach out to me, you can reach out to me outside of Slack on Twitter, Instagram. You have that here, so you don't have to. I don't have to keep the screen open for you. But yeah, I hope you guys had fun. I know it was kind of like a weird start with like trying to figure out Figma, but I hope you guys learned something today, and I'll be on Slack, so feel free to reach out to me there. Thank you.